Hey guys, this is Adam. So this is going to be our first Unity tutorial. We're just going to get the basics, just get you familiar with Unity and what it is to offer and the layout of everything. So what you're going to do is just open up Unity and you're going to be greeted with a little pop-up menu. It'll show you all your previous projects. Like I'm working on Mario right now, and this is one where it was just like testing everything out. So, gonna make a new project. And right here is just where you name it. So let's just name it Intro to Unity. And then I'm actually gonna save it over in the YouTube folder in Introduction to Unity. And I always like to make them 2D to begin with, especially with just beginning out. But you could always, you could actually change it in the editor. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Alright, so this is actually the editor. I'll do this later. So this is this middle scene right here. It's where you actually got to design your game. I like to make it a little bit bigger just so you have more room to work with. You can see up here there's different tabs, and the scene is actually where you drag and drop all your assets and whatever else you want to put in there. The game, this is what your game looks like right now. And if you click play up here, you see everything goes gray. And now it's showing what your game looks like. So obviously you want your game to look a little bit better than this. Up here, these are different tools. You can see if you hover over them, it shows you what it does. This just helps you move around. And when you have actual objects in there, this will move them up, down, left, right, and then in the Z, on the Z-axis as well. This rotates. This scales them to be either bigger or smaller, so the aspect ratio stays the same. And then the rest, I don't really use them all that much. I mainly just stay with these four. So yeah, I'd always also recommend using a mouse. I'm using one right now. It just makes it easier to like scroll in and out than using a trackpad and like dragging around and everything. Just makes life a little bit easier. Over here's your inspector. And once we add in an actual object into the scene, this will come into play more. But for right now, we could just not worry about that for a little bit. Over here is actually where it's your project folder, and it's where you're going to keep all your the different things in your game. So for example, let's say you're making a Mario, right? And you could have level 1 here as one scene. Then you have level 2 as another scene, and then so on and so forth. Right now we're in the sample scene. And then assets, let's create a new folder. Keeps you organized, and let's just call this objects. And in that folder, we can put in lots of different things. We have C# scripts, yada yada yada. And just to get us going a little bit, let's just make a 3D object. Now this is a 2D game. You could change that right up here. Switch between the 3D and 2D view. This is 3D. This is 2D. Now you can add 3D objects to a 2D game. For example, if you wanted to, let's say, make a platformer game, right? And you want to have your character running across something. Well, you could use a cube, right? And that cube's right here. You see, there's a cube. And to make it bigger or smaller, it just drags it around left and right using the move tool. But let's say you want to make it wider, right, to cover the whole screen. This camera is what you see on the screen. We see our little brick right there in the game. So what you want to do over here is come over to the inspector that I was talking about. And what you could do is you could actually, so that's what, the Y direction and the X direction. what you want to do is you want to make the X scale. Let's just make it 10. Makes it 10 times as long, right? So let's try making it, what, 20? Or 12? Or 19? Okay, yeah, 19 will work. Let's make it 20 just so we have a nice round number. Drag that down. And the next thing you know, you have a floor. Looks like a floor, right? Drag it down a little bit more. And that's looking good. So, one thing I like to do when I'm making the games is, what this does, you just right click to bring up this menu, and it brings up all the different objects you could add to your game. And one useful thing is to create an empty object and just give it a name. Again, you come over here to the inspector, just give it a name. Let's just call it objects in scene, just for example. Lots of times you group together similar objects, but just to prove a point, let's just put all our objects in the scene in objects in scene. So we have a cube, right? Now let's say we want to put a ball on the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to click over here, make a 3D object, and make a sphere. Now, let's just put this over here. Well, let's put it up here. So, let's start the game, right? Let's see what happens to this ball. Now what you're going to see is it just stays there. It doesn't fall, doesn't do anything. And over here you see how there's a transform, there's a sphere mesh collider. We're not going to worry about this. These two, don't worry about the meshes right now. And then there's a collider. Well, what we could do is to get the physics involved, we could get a rigid body and add that to the sphere. And now watch what the sphere will do. It just falls right to the ground. So all the rigid body does for a 3D object is it adds physics to it. You could see we could, angular drag. This, all angular drag will do is just when it's falling through, the greater it is, the slower it'll fall. So let's say we made it 5. You'll see it'll really drag through the air. It's like air resistance. You can't really see it there. Let's just put that back. What was it, 0.05? Alright. Using gravity, if you take that off, it shouldn't fall. You see, and then one thing to note is, let's say we check use gravity. When we're in the placing, anything that you put over here in the inspector won't save. So after we're done playing our game, you'll see that use gravity is unchecked. So always just make sure you're aware of whether you're actually playing your game or not, and whether your changes are actually gotta be saved. So let's just put this in the center. Alright, yeah, let's just keep it right there. And then the rest of these we're not going to worry about for right now. We'll get more into it in a little bit, but right now let's just get our ball rolling a little bit. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of the programming and just show you guys what I'm doing. So here, let's go into our assets, and then what I like to do is make a folder for all my scripts, is what you call them. So scripts. And what you do with the scripts is it's you telling the game what you want to do. So for example, we're going to put a script on this ball over here, right? And what do you think we want the ball to do? We want the ball to move. So let's call this create C# script move ball. And this is a little preview of your script, but all we're going to do, okay. All we're going to do is double click on that, and then either Visual Studio or Mono Develop, I think it is, will come up. And those are just the two IDs that we're going to use. I use Visual Studio depending on what you install or how old your version of Unity is, you could be using MonoDevelop. Essentially the same thing. There won't be any real differences that we have to worry about for the sake of these tutorials. And it's loading up. You're going to see that in the script, they actually have two pre-made methods. One's called start. Yeah, here we go. So here, one's called start, and then one is called update. All start will do is it'll run the very first time the script is called. So whenever it would come into play, this is what would happen at the beginning. Update, on the other hand, is called every single frame. So for our ball to move, we're gonna want it to we're gonna want to put in an update, because you never know when you might want to move the ball. You're not gonna want to only move it at the beginning. You're gonna want to move it throughout the game. So what we're gonna do is, well, here. So we're gonna go back into here, and in our sphere, you see there's this transform, right? And just to get a feel for how we're going to want the ball to move right now, there's better ways to do it, but just for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to do it this way. So look over here in the transform, over in the position. You can see that as you move the ball left, or right, sorry, the X direction gets bigger. And then as you move it left, it gets smaller. So just on the simple Cartesian plane, it's what they're using, just a regular coordinate plane. And does that. So what we want to do is we're going to go over here, back into Visual Studio, and we're going to set a public float is what we're going to do. Now, I know some programming teachers out there might not like using the word public, but hear me out, it does work. So we're going to make a public float speed, and let's set that to 0.5 f. Now the reason we use f is because whenever you declare float in C#, you always want to just put the lowercase f on the end. It lets the compiler know that it is indeed a float, and that's just what C# uses. Now this public keyword, here, let me show you. So you just save the script whenever you want to go back into Unity. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually attach this script to the sphere. So all you have to do, it's very simple. Is just drag this right over here. And then you got the move ball script, and here we see speed. So what this does is, by making it public, is throughout the game, while we're testing out the game, we could go over here and change the speed, and instead of having to go back into the script and, you know, type in, let's say you want to make it 0.2 or 10, you know what I mean? You could just do it right in here instead of going back into the script. Now remember, it doesn't save, so it's going to go back to 0.5, or no, it does stay the same. I'm sorry. For scripts, whenever you change a variable, it does stay the same. So let's just put it back to 0.5. Let's go back into here and get this ball moving. So you remember how we want to put this, we want to change this X position in the transform. So what we're going to do is we have to get the key down, right? So what we're going to do is if input dot. So all input does is it gets the all the input methods that Unity allows. So we're going to say get key down key code, and we're going to use W, A, S, and D to move. So is the key code D to move right? Alright, so what this does is go to the input class, calls the method getKeyDown, and with the key code D, it returns Boolean. So if it's false, it's not going to run this. And if it's true, it's going to run what's in this if statement. Now, if you don't know what an if statement is, I'd recommend going to a different tutorial because I'll explain a little bit on what I'm doing if I do anything a little bit fuzzy. But overall, I'm not going to walk through a lot of the basics. I'll explain a little bit. Like an if statement, it'll only run if this condition right here is true. Other than that, it won't run. So if you're not pressing D, it won't run. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the transform, the position of this ball. So to see what I'm doing here, we're going over here into the inspector and we're looking at what we want to modify. We're going to the transform, the position, then we want to change the X coordinate. So what we're going to do is take the data, or here, let's do it like this. So equals, so this is a vector, right? If you don't know what a vector is, it's essentially just the X, Y, and Z positions. For a vector 2, it's only X and Y. And for a vector 3, it's X, Y, and Z for 3D. Let's just deal with a vector 2 right now. So let's say new vector 2. All we're doing here is just making a new vector 2. We're assigning the transform dot position to a new vector 2. And if we want to change the X, if it goes X, Y like that, right? We're going to change the X to transform dot position dot X plus speed. You see what I'm doing here? You take the original transform at this frame and you add the speed to it. So what we should see is it moving along at 0.5 units every single second we're holding down D. And then we're not changing the Y right now. So we're just going to keep it transform dot position dot Y. The reason we have to do it like this is because you can't, here, so let me comment this out. You can't just say transform dot position dot X equals transform dot position dot X plus speed. It'll yell at you and say that you can't, it's not a variable, you cannot change it. You actually have to assign a whole new vector to the whole position. And this is the easiest way to do it for our purposes right now. So now if you want to do else if input dot get key down key code dot A to move left, right? There we go, and then do the same thing here. Transform dot position equals new vector 2. And now we want to go left, right? So we can do transform dot position dot X minus the speed. So it'll move the same speed in the X and Y direction. And then transform dot position dot Y, since we're not changing our Y coordinate at all. So now let's just save this. And it's always a good thing to put in comments. So if you don't know how to do a comment, it's just 2 forward slashes. Moves our ball in the direction, or moves our ball based on what key we press using WASD. Just W and D, or A and D for now, but later on we'll end up using the space bar when we want to jump. So here, actually it's A and D, A, D. Now let's go back to Unity, save, and then let's give this a run. I have a feeling 0.5 is going to be a little bit too fast. Yeah. So now what you notice is get key down, you have to press it every single time. every single time you want to move, you have to press D. You can't just hold it down. So I want you to go to Unity's docs, and I want to see if you can actually get the ball moving fluidly on your own. I'm not going to show it in this video. We're running a little bit long, but in the next video, in the beginning, I'll show you how we could get it moving nice and fluid throughout the base. But to get you what's the word I'm looking for? To get you familiar with the Unity docs, all you gotta go is just Google search Unity docs. And here, let's bring this over here. So all this does here, let's go to that. And you see all over here we have 2D, right? Let's go to 2D. And these are all the documents for 2D stuff. And what you could search in here, search input. And this will show you all the methods and input once it loads. But I think you guys get the point. Yeah, so here we could go to input, and then you can look through all the methods and input. Somewhere over here, transforms. So I'd look through here, and then see if you could find a way to get this ball moving fluidly. Let me give you a hint. It has something to do with this section right here. So give it a shot, and I will post a solution in the next video. Make sure to stay tuned. I'll try to post videos once every couple days, once or twice a week I'll try to. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry I made this one a little bit long. Try to keep them a little bit shorter to begin in the next one. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any suggestions at all for the rest of the videos. But take care.